Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me on the Gift of Need podcast. I'm Jude DeMeglio-Trang, author, landscape designer, musician, wife, mother, grandmother, etc. This podcast explores the overlooked power of human need and how it shapes behavior, relationships, and society, and is born from the belief that our needs are not burdens but gifts. And I'm so excited. My guest today is Suzanne Hodges. We have been friends for years and have many similar areas of interest. One is the natural beauty of Tucson, which we both love, old houses, art, music. So, Suzanne, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and what you are currently up to.
Okay. Well, I have lived in Tucson for over 45 years now. Came from Northern California via Atlanta, Georgia, and was born in Virginia. Yeah. So I've lived all over, but have really loved and found my home in the desert Southwest. I worked for over 30 years as an attorney here in Tucson, as the in-house counsel for a large nonprofit organization that coordinated behavioral health services in southeastern Arizona. So I have now retired and spend 90% of my time making art and other things. So using the other side of my brain. Spent many years being very rational, trying to give good advice, keep people out of trouble. And now I am trying to be more supportive in the way of giving people things to look at and to ponder and to think about, and going to art shows and talking to people about art. So it's just been a great two different sides of my life that I have found meld very well together.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, today we're going to be talking about art and beauty. And if you saw the article that came out on the Gift of Need newsletter on art and beauty, this was the art logo was Suzanne's, a piece of her art. And let's start with, why don't you tell us what influenced you to become an artist? Were you raised around an art colony, or what was your background for this?
Well, my mother was a very good artist. She did watercolors. She was a concert pianist, and so she taught piano lessons in our house. So I was surrounded by music all of the time. So she really encouraged me to, use my creative spirit. At the time, also always encouraging me to be very much into reading and studying and mathematics and everything else. So to use your entire brain. So I think that was one of the real influences. My grandmother was a very good seamstress, and she could basically look at anything, sit down, draw the pattern, and make whatever it is you wanted. Wow. So if I wanted a dress that looked like my classmate's villager, very high-priced dress, if he would lend it to me, I could take it to my grandmother and show it to her, and she would make it for me. So it was very cool. So I learned from both of them, that basically the importance of being able to make things. My grandmother loved to quilt also, and to crochet and to embroider. So I spent a lot of time, she lived around the corner from us, so I spent a lot of time with her, just kind of talking to her, sometimes watching her soap operas in the afternoon. And she was always doing something, sewing something, crocheting something. So that's, I think, were my two major influences.
Yeah. When you were learning from your mom, was it drawing? Was it watercolors? What type of medium was that? And did you get into that?
Well, she really loved watercolors. I did not. They're very unforgiving. I mean, you can't make mistakes. Once it's there, it's there. So if it's not right, you've got to work around it, or you got to throw it away and start over again. But she was very much into always thinking and doing something. So if on a hot summer day or something, I'd say, I was bored. Next thing you know, I'd be sitting at the kitchen table with a live still life in front of me, of apples and oranges and a bottle and, and paints and crayons and things and drawing. And so that's, one of the ways I learned that, you can always be doing something, and that has stayed with me. I have a little bit of trouble being idle.
Well, and I just think about that. Like your mom, our mom wasn't an artist, but she would send us outside, like go play or whatever. And nowadays it's like hand the kid the iPad or the phone and let them watch a video, which really stifles creativity,
And we also, one of the things I think that really influenced me in a different kind of artistic way is that we had this great box of dress-up costumes and old dresses that my great-aunt Brownie had given us and stuff. And so we put on a lot of plays, and we had the costumes there. So we would make up plays, or all the kids in our neighborhood would read the same book, and we'd make a play out of it. So, I think there was just in our whole neighborhood, all of the parents encouraged us to be creative and to do things.
Would you describe the type of medium you use in your art? It is unique. It's not watercolor. It's not acrylic. It's not oil painting. Tell us a little bit about it.
I'm very tactile. I like things that I can pick up and touch and cut and tear and paste. So what I do is I make paper. I make handmade paper, and using the traditional, old way of the pulp, running it through a screen and then getting the water out of it, and you come up with this really great textured paper. I can throw seed heads in there and lint out of the dryer if it's an especially nice color, anything that's fibrous. So I make paper, and then I do what is technically collage, because it is then cut and pasted. So I think that's the definition of collage. And it's not, some of it is abstract, but most of it is very pictorial. It represents buildings, animals, birds, places. I love canyons. I do a lot of canyons. And so it's layering and just trying to create effects with paper. So.
Well, so where do you get the inspiration for your art?
Oh, everywhere. I walked over here today. It's about a 35-minute walk from my house to where we're doing this. And I just noticed that as I'm walking along the street, you just see things. And the way my brain works creatively is when I see something and I like the way it looks, I try to figure out how I would make that out of my paper. What would I do, to get that effect? So as I was walking along, I saw a house that had a kind of an archway on it, and the blue sky was behind it. So how do you make something that, captures that effect of the blue behind the white, and at the same time giving it some depth? So, what else do you put in there? A little bit of purple, that kind of rims the inside of the white, so it gives it just a little bit of depth. So that's how I'm thinking. And so everything I see, I love, like I say, I love canyons. I love to go anywhere where there's a river running through rocks and see all of the levels and the colors of the rocks that go down to the water and try and represent that. I love architecture. I love mid-century modern architecture. I love traditional Southwestern architecture. The paper lends itself very well to stucco. So anything that is stucco or brick or concrete, like I say, I love mid-century. I love cast concrete. So the paper looks really great if it's being made into concrete blocks too. And, birds. I love birds. I get a lot of inspiration from birds, from plants. You and I both are big gardeners, A couple of years ago, we had a agave that bloomed in the backyard, and it became the subject of many of my pieces because it was just so majestic. It was such a force of nature, and it attracted birds and bats and bees. And so, then you just start filling in around something that you like with other things that you like. And in the end, you have a pretty good composition.
Well, and I was just thinking, like in art, the thing that changed in the Renaissance was that perspective, right? But trying to do that with paper, like it could just be, if you didn't have that artist's eye and that concept of perspective, it could seem really flat,
Yes.
like a I don't know, a billboard or something that doesn't show anything. So I think this quote by Paul Cézanne says, "A work of art which did not begin in emotion is not art." And we've talked about your creative process. Would you describe it here, because it relates to that quote?
Well, it's kind of what I've talked about a little bit before. It's just looking at something and then trying to figure out what the parts of it are that make it what it is. And so I look at something, take it apart, put it into its parts, and then put it back together again. And it might not necessarily be the same way it is when you look at it, but it's something that represents that. So my work is meant to represent something real, but not be realistic. To give people my sense of what it feels to look at that thing. And then take what I see, and rearrange it and make it into something that I hope other people will see and recognize, and then be able to put not only what I feel about it into that picture, but what they see also. So
it's like a puzzle is what you're describing.
it is like a puzzle, and it's a puzzle that you hope that when you put it back together again, it won't reflect only who you are, but what someone looking at it is too. So they can see the puzzle in a different way than that you see it. My husband's always looking at something and said, this is in your picture, this is that. And I said, no, I didn't intend it to be that, but I'm really glad that you saw that, because I worked on this for days and it never occurred to me that that's what it was. But when you look at it, that's the first thing you see, you know? So I think that's great. It really is from my eye to someone else's eye, and it can vary from place to place. But in the end, I hope that it's something that's intriguing and insightful, and that people can gain something positive from.
What do you love about doing art? Like, what is is it, I don't know, do you view it like it's work? Do you view is it energizing? And what is it about art that makes you love to do it, I guess would be my question.
Well, it is work. I mean, I get up in the morning and I have my breakfast, and then I go into my studio and I work. And but there's an incredible amount of satisfaction from it. I mean, I enjoyed my years as an attorney. I thought, the work I did was valuable, and I got made a lot of good friends. I think we did some good, really good things for the community. And that's one way of working. But the way of working when it's just you, that you're concentrating on what you are doing, the size of what you're doing, the colors of what you're doing, the composition of what you're doing. To me, having something at the end that then you can put on the wall and look at, and
it's tangible,
it's
right?
very, very tangible.
Right.
It's really real. It's a real product. And that's why I really consider myself, I imagine I'm an artist, but I really am a maker of things. I like to make not only this, but I make sculptures, I make block prints. I just like to make things, to have something in the end that you can hold. And something, that keeps your mind occupied about it all the time. I dream about this stuff. If I'm working on something at night and I don't know exactly how to do it, I know to wait and go to sleep and wake up in the morning, and I will have many times figured out the rest of that puzzle that I wasn't able to figure out just while I was working on it, because you get so involved with it. So you need that little bit of distance sometimes. So I find the creative process to be something that just engages me entirely. I can, go to work in the morning and suddenly the only reason I know it's, getting later in the day is that I'm hungry. I need to stop, or I'm thirsty. So I have to go get something to drink, But no, it truly is engrossing.
And I think it's like all creators and creative people and processes, when you make it, sure, you could line your walls with it and be satisfied, but it also relates to what you hope someone else will receive from this. Because like writing a song, you can write a song and sing it to yourself all day, but the point is to present it to other people, and you hope that it will touch them in some way. And for you, I think one way that describes this is something, a quote from Robert Henry, who was an American impressionistic painter. And he says, all real works of art look as though they were done in joy. And that's the feeling I get when I look at your collages. I think that, I don't know, speak to that element of other people.
I do a number of shows every year, and one of the things I love about it is being able to talk with people about what they see in my work, and to tell them the story, because I really am. That's one thing I try to do with my art too, is to tell a story. And I have found that when I talk with people who are really enjoying, looking at my work, if I can tell them a story about the background of it or what it means to me, and then they have a story that they can tell me about, something that it may have triggered in their mind, and that may be why they like it. There's something about it that reminded them of something else. So that going back and forth of talking about the story that's in a picture and the way you did it, and what it means to you and what it means to them, is a joyful thing. It really does. It makes that connection, to a person who you might not otherwise have anything really to talk to about, or you may not have the same political persuasion. You may not, have the same religious background. You may not have any of that, but there's something in that piece of work that has captured their imagination, and it's part of your imagination. So it gives you a connection right there. And it's almost always, as you say, a joyous connection. It's something that you go away from feeling like, oh, that was a really good communication. I'm glad I met that person. I'm glad we had this in common to talk about.
Right. I think that's true. And yeah, I mean, your husband, Charlie's a storyteller and writer, and I hope that he'll come on the podcast soon. One of your pieces of art recently had of a mountain here in Tucson. And I told you how that reminded me when I saw it of something from a group of guys who lived in a little house, terrible little house. And they kept it was just mess, but it was called the A Mountain House. And seeing your art of A Mountain brought that memory back to me and brought back the faces of those people. And so I think storytelling is definitely part of the art and part of your art, because, when you see photographs, we see the real thing. So for you, you're taking what we see and what you see with your eye, but you're not like duplicating the photograph, right?
No. I do work from photographs sometimes. And I like that because you can take something that you saw. It's a photograph I've taken. I've never done anything off of other people's photographs. So, and then it helps you remember things about it. But it's that adding of the imagination, like you have a photograph of something and it's not going to be exactly what you have in your mind, what you remember about it, especially if it's been a while since you took that photograph, because your mind has added all kinds of things to that picture in the meantime, the way the light looked, if there was a cat running down the street, if a bird flew over or an airplane, you're adding all of those other things into it too. So I like my work It is not realistic, but I think on many levels it is real, and people know what it is, and they can understand it, and they can relate it to something.
Something in the real world.
Exactly,
right,
but it doesn't.
Right.
It's not the real world,
Right,
and that's why
right.
I think people like it. It's not realistic.
Right.
It's not the real world, but it suggests things to them, and it brings back memories. I did a picture once of the Santa Cruz Church on 22nd Street. I don't know if you know it. It's a beautiful old building, and I had it in a show. And this woman came up and she started crying, and it was just this, thing. She said, my parents were married in that church. My grandmother went to mass at that church all the time. So she had the story that connected with what the picture was. And so it meant so much more to her than it had even to me at the time.
I love that. Connecting art and beauty to our need. I feel that humans have a need for art and beauty, and that it's a really important part of our lives. I think, if we lived in an ugly world, like, say, Mars or Venus, that's just like a desert scape, not like our beautiful desert, but really nothing but rocks, it would be different. But I think because we have this incredibly beautiful world, like the sky, no sunrise or sunset or cloudscape is ever the same, and nature changes, and we go from spring to summer to fall to winter. Even in a place like Arizona, we have a little bit of season. And I think that we were created for this need, and that it fulfills us in so many ways. And as an artist, you, by creating your art, are taking your gift and offering it to other people that definitely fills a human need. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that. And to just go back a little bit about what you were saying, one of the things that has always amazed me is how human beings have, things that you need to do. Thing is very utilitarian. So you make a pot, and because you need the pot. But then you decide, well, it's not just utilitarian. I'm going to make designs on this pot, or I'm going to put clouds on this pot. There's something about the beauty of our world that people want to make into a tangible, semi-permanent thing. They want to be able to have a piece of pottery that looks beautiful when they're, gathering the water or making whatever it is. They want to be able to look at it. There's this human need, I think, of making things beautiful.
Yeah,
I mean,
agree.
Cave drawings, as far back as they know, people have been drawing pictures of animals on caves, and I'm sure there's a, utilitarian reason to it, but it's also just because they're beautiful,
right.
And because the art of creating something takes you to a different place.
Right.
And I think humans like that, to feel like you're connected with where you are, to recognize the beauty of where you are, and to incorporate that into everything that you use on a daily basis.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, it's so important to me, and it brings me joy. Who are some of your favorite artists?
Oh, boy, many.
Many.
I love Georgia O'Keeffe. I think, her, and again, it's the simplicity of it. She can take something and take it down to its simplest forms, put it together, and you know exactly what it is she's talking about. It may not look like a stone monolith, but you know what it is, So I love her. I love Modigliani, because, again, it's so abstract in a way, but it's forms, It's like what I like to do. I like to take color and form and put it together to make something, and that's exactly what he does. And by the time he's finished with a person, it's a person, but it's, if you take the pieces of it apart, it's not a person, it's all of these other things. I like David Hockley a lot. And because, again, of his simplicity and being able to just take things down to its core and make you know exactly what it is that he's doing with just the simplest of things. On a local basis, I love Maynard Dixon. He was able to capture the Southwest and all of its regal beauty. Currently, there are some really great artists in Tucson. I love Gavin Troy. I don't know if you know his work, but it's just, again, very simplistic, but thoughtful, deep, beautiful.
Right. How about the murals all over Tucson?
Oh, yeah. They're tremendous.
Oh, it's
They are
just
tremendous.
amazing. I love it. It just makes, when we're driving down a street, I'll go, John, there's a new mural on the side of that building, like down an alley where you would never think, but it beautifies the area. Yeah. John loves to go and take his motorcycle and parks in front and takes photos.
Yeah, and people are doing it all on their own private walls.
Yeah.
Just as I was walking over here, and within, a mile, I saw 3 different murals on people's walls. Yeah, so
cool.
People, like I say, people have this need to take a very utilitarian, functional thing like their wall and make it beautiful.
Yeah. Well, do you have any suggestions for someone who is interested in creating art or just starting out or teaching art to young people? Any things that you would suggest to kind of help light the fire, take it from it being a mechanical thing to being a thing where their feelings and emotions are coming through?
Well, you just have to start. And I think that's where a lot of people get, hung up, not on just art, but on everything. It's like, I see this beautiful thing and I'm here and that person is over here and I can't get there. But you can, and it's just kind of a step by step. Find something that you like to do. If I had tried to paint, I would never have really gotten far because I had to find something that fit me. I like tactile things. I like cutting. I like pasting. I like the collage part of art. I think that you do have to have a basic idea of how to draw things, in order to really do any kind of art. But it doesn't have to be a deep understanding. There's a great book. It's called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. And it starts off with the premise that people say they can't draw, but you can. And it takes you through these steps of how you do it. And one of the things I think that stuck with me and that I didn't use entirely, but that really has been a big factor in my work is that the woman who wrote this book said one of the things that people get hung up on is that they think they know what something looks like. So drawing a picture of a cat, you think you know what a cat looks like. So you start drawing a cat and it turns out to be cartoonish. But if you really sat and looked at a cat or you looked at a picture of a cat and you didn't think of this is a cat, this is just a series of forms and shapes and lines. And how do I draw those forms and shapes and lines? And if you do that, you will come up with what that cat or approximation of what that cat really looks like. So I think
by breaking it down.
It's this great exercise. You take a line drawing of some time, you turn it upside down, and then you just draw what you see. And when you turn it right side up, it's what you saw. Your mind just breaks it down then into the forms of what it is. And you can put them back together the way it is in that picture, or you can put it back together in a way that suits you. But it isn't thinking of that. I'm going to draw a picture of this lamp because I know what a lamp looks like. So in my mind, I'm going ahead and drawing, my imagination of what a lamp is. But if I take it and cut it down into its forms,
interesting,
then you get something that is much closer to it. It's not your preconceived idea of what a lamp looks like. It's what that lamp really looks like. And then you can take it in its realistic form, or you can rearrange it to still represent a lamp, but to be a different version of a lamp.
Well, it sounds like your mom and your grandma and just growing up around people who encouraged you to create in different ways gave you experience in a lot of things that then you could later on hone in and refine and get down to. So, well, we could go on and on. I know we could talk all day about this, but it is time to bring the conversation to a close. Thank you, Suzanne, for making the time to be with us today and to talk about how the gifts and needs that we have as individuals for creativity can be gifts to others as they meet the needs of individuals and communities and society as a whole.
Well, thank you very much. It's been wonderful to be here.
Sadly, Suzanne's work is only available at local art shows.
Not really.
No? Okay.
I've got things in several galleries.
Well, galleries, that's true,
Yeah.
in Tucson. But
Right,
you
in
cannot
Tucson.
go online and
No.
find Suzanne's art. So come to Tucson, and you can see all the beautiful art here. I want you to know that the great music you're hearing was written and performed by Gabe Kubanda at Kubanda Music. You can find him on any streaming service. Please consider subscribing to my free podcast and my free Substack newsletter and leave a comment or review. I'd love to hear from you. Bye.